Welcome back to Dispensationalism. Now, you may be wondering why we're taking a little extra time with this particular view, and there's actually a very good reason. It's not because I think this view is more important, although you could argue that point. The reason why is because of its modern relevance, because of its popularity, and because of its complexity. Because of all those things. It is very relevant today, is a modern view, and it's still very popular. And because of those things, I want to take a little bit more time in explaining some of the details so you understand everything this view entails. Now that I've said that, back in the 1980s, there was actually reform within traditional dispensationalism. What we've been talking about is the traditional view, but there was reform in the 1980s, and this reform was called progressive dispensationalism. Now, please don't let the word progressive throw you off, okay? Because when it comes to the world of politics or even in general, that word sometimes has a negative connotation. Don't take the word that way. The reason they called it progressive is because they believed in a progressive revelation in the Bible, a progressive redemptive plan of God. Basically, the focus and the reason why they made some changes in the views is because they were worried, they were concerned about this focus in traditional dispensationalism on a Jewish kingdom or a theocratic kingdom in the future millennial reign. There's a great focus of that in traditional dispensationalism. They became concerned and they were worried of how this interacts with Christians and the promises made to Christians in the New Testament. Be that as it may, the reason I point this out is because it was kind of a breakaway from the traditional view, particularly having to do with the Jewish kingdom, an earthly Jewish kingdom out in the future. So they kind of broke away from that view, and that's why I point that out. As we talked about the four views, there are many different splinters and different ideas I haven't talked about. I've tried to stay in the main views, and the reason why is because I want to give you a big picture view so you have a general understanding. But the reason I point this one out is because it really broke away from a very main traditional view within dispensationalism. Now let's take a breath and think about why dispensationalism is so popular in American culture. We have already noted that the Schofield Reference Bible helped make this view widely popular. However, Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, also was very popular in the 1970s, selling over 28 million copies. Also, most of us are aware of the Left Behind series of books and movies written by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. This series actually has sold over 50 million products. And of course, all of these espouse a dispensationalist view. Again, thinking about why this view is so popular, it really is not hard to figure out. The preliminary focus of this view is the secret rapture of the church, which means Christians escape the coming 7-year tribulation. Remember, we learned that postmillennialism was the dominant view just before dispensationalism arrived on the scene. And because of all the national and world calamities, postmillennialism fell out of favor. Dispensationalism makes a big deal about the reign of terror of the Antichrist, yet it also demonstrates escapism, believers escaping suffering. It is important to realize that cultural shifts do affect theology and belief systems. They shouldn't, but they do. Let's be honest. We are human and want to avoid suffering of any kind. George Eldon Ladd, an historic premillennialist, says that the pre-tribulational premillennialism, i.e. dispensationalism, tends to neglect the more fundamental issues of Christianity. Ladd writes that dispensationalism sacrifices the incentive for world evangelism, and if that's not enough, he adds that the biblical idea of expectancy is not the same as the belief in an any moment coming of Jesus. What Ladd is saying is Christianity should not be defined in terms of escaping suffering, but should be of a preservation, a purifying hope in Jesus Christ. The danger is the church is left unprepared for suffering and tribulation, which will come. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, or what time period you live in, tribulation will come. And remember, as we have said all along, your theology, your belief system affects your life. It affects your decisions. It affects your attitudes. It affects how you live your life every day, whether you realize it or not. So the question is, how are you going to live your life? What do you believe, and how are you going to live? Consider this. If you really believe in any moment coming of Jesus, in other words, you believe you're going to be leaving at any moment, are you going to evangelize your neighbors? Are you going to get up and go to work today? Are you going to pay the mortgage? Are you going to pray? Your belief system matters. It matters a great deal. Ideas are very, very powerful. Beware. Ideas have consequences.